You have 6 weeks to become the husband I deserve. But what happened next? At 43, I thought my life was bulletproof. My engineering career was thriving, my marriage to Rebecca seemed unshakable, and our teenage son Ethan was excelling at school. But one Tuesday evening, as I sat reviewing project blueprints in our Denver suburban kitchen, she walked in like a prosecutor about to deliver a verdict. No greeting, no warmth, just 4 words that would shatter everything I believed about our life together. You have 6 weeks to become the husband I deserve. I'm Christopher Reynolds, a structural engineer who thought he understood foundations. That night, I learned the difference between concrete and quicksand. The house carried the lingering aroma of the salmon I'd grilled earlier, my laptop screen still glowing with CAD drawings, and somehow in my own sanctuary, I was suddenly facing a performance evaluation I never signed up for. I didn't respond immediately because after 11 years of marriage, you develop a radar for the storms brewing behind carefully chosen words. Arms folded, chin elevated, that distant look in her eyes when someone's already decided the outcome but pretends there's still a negotiation happening. She dressed for her pottery class like she was attending a gallery opening, her auburn hair styled with deliberate precision. Her smartphone pressed against her thigh like she was guarding state secrets, and I could sense the weight of whatever truth she was desperately trying to contain. What exactly does that mean? I asked, using the measured tone you employ when someone promises to circle back but has already mentally left the building. It means I need to witness transformation, consistency, genuine effort, she replied with that consultant-speak polish, words that sound quantifiable until you attempt to measure them. No specific examples, just quarterly objectives with zero key performance indicators. Her gaze drifted past me toward the monitor, then to the takeout container I'd saved for her on the counter. She ignored both like they were outdated furniture we'd never agreed to purchase. I waited. In tense moments, people eventually reveal what they're desperately trying not to say. She was prepared for silence too, which revealed more than any confession could have. For months, I'd sensed it lurking in life's peripheral spaces where truth conceals itself. Passwords mysteriously changed under the banner of enhanced privacy, new fitness classes that conveniently overlapped our dinner time. Muffled laughter from the hallway while she scrolled through her phone in darkness, then the lightning-quick screen flip whenever I appeared. She'd begun reframing our relationship narrative to others. Not we or my husband and I, but casual jokes about how I live buried in blueprints and wouldn't recognize romance unless it came with structural specifications. Harmless on the surface, but humor is simply a delivery mechanism for deeper intentions. I tried to recall the last time she reached for my hand first. The memory eluded me. I could recite material stress calculations from projects 5 years back, but couldn't pinpoint the last Saturday that felt like two people building toward the same vision. That realization didn't ignite anger, it crystallized brutal honesty. I requested specifics. What would these 6 weeks look like if I executed flawlessly? She had prepared talking points, but they'd been workshopped away from us. Orchestrate surprises, initiate more connection, make her feel prioritized, reduce rigidity, read emotional cues, embrace spontaneity while maintaining predictability where it mattered. A contradictory list that cancels itself out if you attempt literal implementation. She'd rehearse this. I could detect the cadence of borrowed phrases. It sounded like her friend Sarah, who narrates her existence like a lifestyle podcast sponsored by self-actualization. I could practically hear the group chat responses. Yes, Queen, clarity equals kindness. I nodded, simply acknowledging that sound waves had occurred in the room. She misinterpreted my nod as capitulation. She shifted her weight, satisfied with her delivery, and checked the time like a business meeting had concluded. I'm heading out, she announced, grabbing the takeout container without making eye contact, then returning it to the refrigerator. When she closed the door, the magnets rattled against each other, the veterinarian appointment reminder, our nephew's graduation invitation, small evidence that life still operated on scheduled dates. She was halfway down the hallway when she called back. This is an opportunity, Christopher. Don't squander it. The front door clicked shut. I stared at the CAD drawings for an extended moment, not processing the structural details. The house hummed with that particular frequency houses emit when they're waiting to discover their identity, home, or merely storage facility. The salmon aroma had transformed from pleasant to stale. I saved the project files, closed the laptop, and slid my chair back deliberately, as if sudden noise might disturb something I wasn't prepared to confront. Here's something I don't broadcast. I'm not allergic to evolution. I've simply learned the true cost of changing for the wrong investor. I washed the grill pan, sanitized the counter, and restored the kitchen to order because maintaining systems is a kindness you can offer yourself. Then I returned to my desk and opened different browser tabs, banking portal, two-factor authentication, subscription management. The mundane infrastructure of an existence. I wasn't operating from panic. Panic generates noise. This was surgical precision. I verified what assets were joint versus individual. I examined the emergency contacts in my health application and modified the primary from Rebecca to my brother Marcus, a small digital click that resonated with larger implications internally. I reviewed our lease agreement out of curiosity, not urgency. A furnished studio apartment downtown materialized in a sidebar advertisement. Algorithms recognize when your pupils dilate in specific patterns. I simply observed it and allowed it to exist there, like luggage positioned near the door that you haven't packed yet. On the counter beside my keyboard sat the photo booth strip from Cascade Lake, captured the summer following our wedding. In the opening frame, she's pulling my face toward hers, eyes closed with absolute gravitational force. In the final frame, I'm gazing at her instead of the camera. I slid the strip into the top drawer, placing it somewhere that matched its current status, historical documentation, not operational instructions. At 9:47 p.m., my phone illuminated with a message from our friend network. Sarah had posted another carousel, ambient candles, motivational quotes, a caption about choosing your authentic self first. There she was, center frame, my wife mid-laugh, but it was a laugh that bypassed the eyes I knew intimately. I flipped the phone face down and listened to the refrigerator's mechanical settling. I wondered if I'd missed crucial signals years earlier, some initial drift I could have corrected by adjusting course sooner. The mind performs this inventory during moments like these, cataloging what could have been repaired if I'd been more attentive, faster, more romantic, less analytical. Then I remembered the sensation from last month when she forwarded me a social media video about partners who still courted each other after decades, then declined my brunch invitation the following morning because she was recharging her energy. The mathematics never balanced. You can't solve contradictions with floral arrangements. I printed the project proposal anyway, initialed the final page, and secured it in my briefcase. Routine provides stability for a man navigating uncertainty. I transferred the leftover salmon into storage containers for tomorrow's lunch. I programmed the coffee maker for automatic brewing. Small actions that prove you're conscious within your own existence. When she returned near midnight, keys softly negotiating a lock, she paused at the office threshold. I maintained focus on the monitor, not as punishment, but declining the invitation to a second performance of the identical scene. She lingered long enough for me to detect her perfume mingled with something like gin. "Did you process what I said earlier?" she asked, voice lighter now, the tone reserved for someone you assume remains on your team. "I processed it," I replied. "That's your complete response?" For now. Silence again, but this one belonged entirely to me. She departed a moment later, 2 footsteps, bedroom door closing, then reopening, then closing again like she was editing the moment and couldn't achieve the perfect cut. I shut down the computer and sat in the darkened room briefly, listening to the house brief itself. My mother used to say, clarity is mercy, even when it devastates. In bed, on my designated side of the mattress we'd selected together but had begun sleeping on separately, I browsed apartment listings without bookmarking anything. I read lease agreements like they were poetry, move-in date, security deposit, key collection. I modified one final setting before sleep, my phone's lock screen, removing shared photographs for a simple blue gradient. A small, quiet restoration. Morning would arrive as it inevitably does. The proposal would be submitted. The coffee would brew. She'd wake expecting revision notes on her ultimatum, perhaps a breakfast apology, a strategic plan with bullet points and timeline. She didn't know that the only thing I was revising was my willingness to be evaluated. Respect isn't earned through deadline compliance. It's enforced through decisive action. I slept more peacefully than anticipated because something fundamental had shifted. The next 6 weeks had already materialized within me by the time the house fell silent. The following morning, she behaved as if our conversation had been motivational rather than terminal. Coffee in her travel mug, blazer razor-sharp perfume that announced itself a half-second before her physical presence. "Let's make this an extraordinary week," she declared like a CEO after implementing layoffs. I watched her exit and realized the deadline had become a new operating system. Everything would now be filtered as data for her ultimate judgment. By lunch, the recalibration commenced. A text featuring a heart emoji and a link to an article about men who orchestrate romance without prompting. No question mark, just the implied assignment. I responded, busy until 7, then placed my phone face down and completed the structural analysis. At 3:47 p.m., another notification, a couples retreat advertisement. 48 hours of workshops featuring words like alignment and restoration. There was a discount code. The accompanying message read, "If we book by Friday, we secure the early registration rate." She was shopping for solutions the way she shops for decorative pillows, aesthetics first, structural integrity second. That evening she returned home dressed for a girls' dinner, a phrase that had recently expanded to include women whose names I'd never heard mentioned. She stood at the mirror fastening an earring and announced, "I told them we're experimenting with intentional spontaneity." I could hear the pride in her declaration, as if she'd already earned credit for changes I hadn't implemented yet. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means I want to witness you elevating without me providing the script," she smiled into the mirror. "Surprise me." I didn't inform her that surprises and deadlines are natural adversaries. I simply nodded and loaded the dishwasher. Over the following days, the pressure manifested through small, deliberate maneuvers. She scheduled an impromptu Saturday brunch with Sarah and 2 others, forgetting we'd planned to visit my father. When I reminded her, she blinked like she was reading captions on a photograph that didn't match the image. "We can visit your dad Sunday," she said, grabbing her keys. "Today is about us learning to be social again." Us, I noted, didn't include me. I went alone to my father's and repaired the loose cabinet door that had been irritating him for months. During the drive back, she texted a photograph of her mimosa with the caption, "See? Trying new experiences." It felt like a social media post targeted at an audience that wasn't me. Her language with our friends shifted further. At a colleague's birthday celebration, she told a story about me forgetting how to be present, complete with theatrical demonstration of me checking my watch. People laugh the way polite people laugh when they want the moment to pass. I smiled and asked the birthday woman about her recent promotion, redirecting the room's energy. Steering conversations isn't difficult. It simply requires ignoring the bait. Later in the car, she said, "You didn't defend yourself." "I didn't need to," I replied. She stared out the window like I'd responded in a foreign language. There were tests disguised as casual inquiries. "What's the plan for tonight?" She'd ask when she already had arrangements. "Let's be spontaneous," I'd suggest. "Cool. I'll see what the girls are doing," she'd respond, watching my face for flinching for pursuit. I offered neither. Silence makes some people curious. It made her irritated. She began leaving clothes draped over the couch back after insisting for years on an organized living space. She rolled her eyes when I folded them. She left the front door unlocked when departing for the gym. When I mentioned it, she waved dismissively. "Stop catastrophizing. People who never secure doors call caution paranoia until the day they don't." I asked a few calm questions, the way you tap a wall to locate structural supports. "Are you seeking counseling or an audience? Do you want transformation or spectacle?" She said I was being combative. I just needed to hear her articulate what the script required. She floated above specifics like a drone collecting footage for a highlight reel. Midweek, she discovered a new gear, public metrics. On Instagram, she posted a carousel about acts of love partners perform, then a poll, "What makes you feel chosen?" I recognized our kitchen counter in the background, my coffee mug just outside the frame. In the comments, her friends typed paragraphs about men who planned sunrise picnics and left notes in lunchboxes. One wrote, "If he wanted to, he would." I stood at the sink rinsing a pan and thought, if you wanted to, you'd notice what already exists. There was no appropriate response that wouldn't transform me into the villain of her thread, so I set my phone aside and sanitized the counter. By Friday, she'd begun narrating my progress. "Over Thai takeout consumed at the coffee table," she said, "I'm observing some effort." I hadn't modified anything except living my life without commentary. She lifted a forkful of pad see ew and added, "But I need consistency." The irony of grading an outcome she invented wasn't lost on me. I nodded and asked about her day. "Productive," she replied, like we were colleagues summarizing a sprint. That night in bed, she lay scrolling, the blue glow painting distance between us. "Sarah says male avoidance is a trauma response," she offered casually, weaponizing psychology. "Is yours?" "I don't speak Sarah," I said. She sighed, flipped onto her side, and said, "Prove me wrong then." I stared at the ceiling and listened to the HVAC cycle. You can't outprove a moving target. You can only stop participating. Saturday morning, I departed early for a run. The air carried that crisp edge that awakens you from within. When I returned, she was positioned in the kitchen wearing a new workout ensemble, leaning against the island with a brochure for the retreat. "There's one slot remaining this month," she said. I told them we might claim it. I poured water, allowed the silence to perform its function. "We?" I asked finally. "Yes," she said too quickly. "This is marriage, Christopher." She used my name like a gavel. "Marriage is what we do when no one is observing," I replied. "Retreats are what we do when everyone is." She laughed without humor. "So that's a no?" "That's a pause," I said, on the theater. She attended girls' dinner again that night, which now seemed to be a daily holiday. This time she left her phone face up on the counter while searching for her keys. A text preview illuminated the screen. "Are you actually giving him a deadline?" She grabbed the phone, noticed where my eyes had been, and lifted her chin. "It's just the group." "I figured," I said. We stood there in a stagnant moment. The house felt like two apartments sharing a wall. Sunday was the softest and worst. Smiles that didn't connect. A suggestion we restart with a picnic at the park, then a late cancellation because I promised Sarah I'd help her plan a product launch. The picnic groceries sat in the refrigerator, strawberries bleeding color into their container like a small, edible metaphor. I grilled chicken and packed my portion for Monday's lunch, threw her portion in a labeled container. Old habits die politely. When she finally returned home, she carried the kind of energy you bring back from a pep rally. "The girls said you looked disengaged at dinner," she announced, removing her heels. "They're concerned." I remembered precisely how many minutes she'd spent at our table in conversation with me. "That's generous of them," I said. "Please thank the committee for their concern." She narrowed her eyes. "You think you're above feedback?" "I think I'm done being scored by people who don't sit at this table." She opened her mouth, closed it, shook her head. 6 weeks, she said softly, like casting a spell. "Don't forget the deadline." She walked around the house, wore perfume, posted stories. Monday arrived with a new tactic, entitlement disguised as expectation. She sent me a list of small things that would make me feel valued: flowers midweek, no screens after dinner, planning a date without asking her input. Half the items were things I'd offered for years. The other half contradicted the first. The list wasn't for me. It was for the record. That evening she asked if I wanted to join her and her friends for trivia night. "No," I said. I almost added, "I don't audition in rooms that don't applaud when I enter," but the lines sounded like movie dialogue, and I'm not a movie. She shrugged, annoyed at my refusal to provide her an easy villain. "We'll be late," she said, as if we were going together. "Have fun," I said. When the door closed, the silence felt like a friend who tells the truth without humiliation. Before bed, I asked the only direct question I'd been carrying since the ultimatum. "Is there someone else?" She didn't look offended. Offended would have been human. She looked inconvenienced. "That's not the point." "That's not a no," I said. "And I don't need a yes." She rolled over and said, "Don't be dramatic." The word dramatic has a way of erasing whatever it's applied to, like correction fluid on a page. I turned off the lamp. The week concluded how it began, with her treating marriage like a product launch: announcements, metrics, optics. I made dinner, fixed a squeaky hinge, got 8 hours of sleep. I was watching the pressure she thought would mold me into a superior version do the opposite. It clarified my outline. There's a point where weight stops shaping and starts breaking. I could feel it in the way my shoulders relaxed when I left the house, in the way my mind quieted when my phone was in another room. Sunday night, she placed the retreat brochure on my pillow like a ticket on a tray. "Early bird rate expires at midnight," she said, lips pressed into a coach's smile. "Your move." I tucked the brochure into the nightstand and said, "Noted." She wanted a show. I gave her a mirror. The deadline glowed on the calendar like a fire alarm with a dying battery, annoying, constant, easy to ignore until you've had enough and pull it from the wall. I didn't say any of that out loud. I waited until the house settled into its nighttime noises before I moved. Not sneaking, just choosing my lane and staying in it. The retreat brochure still sat in the nightstand like a dare. I left it there and rose without turning on the bedroom light. The carpet remembered my steps. In the office, the monitor woke to familiar blue. Numbers have never lied to me. People try. Accounts don't. I started with the small things that change bigger things. 2-factor logins, banking application, joint savings first. I transferred my half to the personal account I'd opened the year we bought this place, the one I used for bonuses and quiet projects I didn't advertise. I left a clean ledger, no overdraft traps. Boundaries aren't revenge, they're simply correctly drawn lines. I paused long enough to listen for movement down the hall. Nothing. The house exhaled, and I continued. Credit cards were next. I removed her as an authorized user on mine and declined the offers to upsell me on protection plans. I changed passwords on streaming services and anything tied to my email. If you declare a trial period, you shouldn't expect full access to premium features. I took screenshots where I needed documentation, stored them in a folder labeled with the date. I pulled the fireproof box from the bottom desk drawer and set it on the mat. Birth certificate, passport, social security card, title for the car, copies of the lease, and insurance. I hadn't examined some of these in years. They all still bore my name. I added the photo strip from Cascade Lake and closed the lid. Sentiment can accompany you. It doesn't have to steer. I opened a browser and searched short-term furnished rentals downtown. The same studio from last week appeared: corner unit, light through tall windows, a desk by the window. The photos were tasteful and generic in the way that makes transition easier. I read the lease terms twice, then completed the application: income, employer, references. I clicked submit and felt the quiet click inside me that happens when you select a path and stop shopping for exits. A confirmation email slid into my inbox with an automated "will be in touch shortly." I'd already moved far enough to make timing a detail. On the way to the guest room, I stopped in the kitchen and set the coffee maker for 6:30. I rinsed my glass and sanitized the counter. Order calms the mind. In the closet of the guest room, I pulled down the small roller bag I use for 3-day trips and started packing like a grown man who knows what he actually wears. 2 suits that work with any shirt, 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, gym clothes, black shoes, brown shoes, the gray quarter zip she hated because she said it made me look like every other engineer in the city. I folded it neatly and zipped it in anyway. Toiletries, spare phone charger, the fireproof box. The sound of the zipper made a clean line in the dark. I left my wedding band on the dresser. Gold doesn't know what month it is. I slept better in the guest room than I had in our bed in weeks. When the alarm sounded, I was already awake. Shower, shave, suit the navy one that says I'm here to do work and then leave on time. I made the coffee I'd programmed for myself, poured 1 cup, left the second carafe full on the warmer without a note. Courtesy isn't a contract. By instinct, I looked at the calendar on the refrigerator while packing my briefcase. Dentist reminder, nephew's graduation party, a sticky note that said early bird ends Sunday with a heart drawn next to it. I peeled the sticky off and stuck it to the retreat brochure in the nightstand as I passed through, then kept walking. She found me in the kitchen a minute later. Hair up, oversized sweatshirt, the kind of morning softness that used to belong to us. "Why are you dressed?" she asked, voice sleep-warm, suspicious of my competence. "It's Wednesday," I said, closing the briefcase. She scanned the roller bag by the door, the jacket on the chair, my shoes lined up neatly on the mat. "What's happening?" "Nothing dramatic," I said. "I'm moving to the guest room for now. I'm transferring some money to my account. I'm giving you the space you requested, just without the theater. You want to change without scripting it." I listened. Her eyes narrowed like I'd misread an instruction. "You can't just—" She stopped, recalculated. "This feels hostile." I shook my head. "It's clarity. You set a deadline for my value. I'm removing myself from the review process." I picked up the roller bag handle. "I'll be staying elsewhere for a bit." Her face performed a quick inventory: anger, confusion, sales pitch. "We can go to the retreat," she said, as if this were a door she'd forgotten to open. "We can fix this. We can stop pretending we're fixing it by inviting an audience," I said. "If you want a counselor, we can discuss it. If you want a scoreboard, you don't need me to keep playing." She shifted tactics. "So you're just leaving?" The word "leaving" carried an accusation, like I was abandoning a post. "I'm stepping out of the performance," I said. "I'm not available for deadlines, auditions, or group notes." She was quiet for a long second. It was the most honest sound we'd shared in weeks. "Where are you going?" she finally asked, like logistics might give her leverage. "A place downtown," I said. "Short term." She took a breath that looked like a choice. "Is there someone else?" I met her eyes. "There is. He's a man I haven't been in a while. He requires a clean environment to work." I didn't wait for her reply. I set my cup in the sink, clicked the suitcase handle into place, and rolled it to the door. She followed, feet bare on tile. "Say something real," she demanded, like she deserved a monologue. I turned the knob and gave her the only line I owed her. "I'm becoming the man who doesn't need a deadline." The hallway felt cooler than the kitchen. Elevator, lobby, morning air that had a different temperature than the one in our house. I loaded the suitcase into the trunk and sat behind the wheel for a minute with the engine off. The office could wait an hour. The apartment manager had emailed back faster than expected, a brief message about a viewing at 10 a.m. and a link to a background check I had already completed. I drove to a coffee place near the building and parked under a tree that was beginning to release its leaves. Inside, I sent 2 emails, one to my brother, "You're now my emergency contact," and one to HR to update the same. I forwarded the apartment confirmation to my personal email and deleted the retreat brochure photo I'd taken, the one I'd kept as a reminder of what I wasn't doing. I paid cash for the coffee without thinking why. The building manager met me at the door with a folder and a practiced smile. He walked me through the unit, opened closets, pointed at outlets like we were touring a future that avoids speeches. The space was clean. The windows faced a street that was busy enough to make you feel less alone. The desk was real wood, not a promise. I signed the lease while he printed the parking pass. Back in the car, I texted her one sentence: "I'll coordinate to pick up the rest of my things when you're out." She replied with 3 bubbles that appeared and disappeared like a heartbeat monitor, then nothing. Silence traveled well across town. At the office, I sent the client proposal at 10:15 sharp and handled the first call like a man who'd slept and eaten and decided. When I hung up, I opened a document titled 6 weeks and deleted it. Then I opened another and typed rent, autopay, utilities, new P.O. box, attorney consult if needed. Not a battle plan, a maintenance schedule for a life that runs without permission slips. Around noon, she called. I let it ring out, then listened to the voicemail, careful tone, a hint of logistics, a rinse of guilt. When I drove back to the new place that evening with the suitcase in the trunk and a grocery bag in the passenger seat, the light through the windows looked like a beginning and a continuation at the same time. I hung 2 shirts. I set the fireproof box on the top shelf. I placed my coffee mug on the counter and programmed the timer for 6:30. Same settings, different home. The silence here didn't measure me. It helped me. Respect isn't a prize you receive for passing a test. It's the condition you create when you refuse to sit for one. The silence didn't just disturb her, its soul crushed her completely. She had expected me to start chasing, questioning, maybe even groveling. That's how the script usually went. But the script was annihilated now, burned the moment she gave me that deadline, and I didn't flinch. By the 3rd day of my withdrawal, her tone transformed entirely. No more clipped, smug remarks about me working on being the husband she needed. Now it was little comments tossed into the quiet, fishing desperately for a reaction. "You've barely spoken to me. You've been different lately. You're not even trying." I didn't give her much, just nods, the occasional and a faint, almost polite smile when she walked past me. She started testing me in other ways, picking at small habits she'd once ignored. Leaving her phone out on the counter with a half-hidden text notification from some name I didn't recognize. In the past, that would have baited me into asking questions. Now I just picked up my keys and went for a run. It got under her skin devastatingly. I could see it in the way her eyes followed me when I moved around the house. She was used to holding the center of my attention, even if it was in the middle of a fight. Now she was orbiting me, waiting desperately for any sign that I was still tethered. One night, she tried a softer approach. I was sitting on the couch reading when she sat down beside me. "Remember when we used to watch movies together?" she asked, voice lighter than it had been in weeks. I kept my eyes on the page. "Yeah, I remember." She didn't expect that answer, flat, without invitation. She waited a beat, then leaned back, exhaling like she'd just taken a hit to the ribs. By the end of the week, she had shifted tactics again, this time guilt. "I feel like you're shutting me out," she said one morning over coffee. I looked at her evenly. "Feels that way because I am." She blinked, thunderstruck at the bluntness. In all our years together, I had never said something like that so plainly. I could see the gears turning in her head, whether to get angry or play the wounded card. She chose wounded. "I just want us to work," she murmured. The change in me started spilling into the outside world. I was sleeping better, working later by choice, even picking up hobbies I'd put off for years. She noticed. "You've been busy lately," she said one night, her voice carrying that nervous edge people get when they realize the ground is shifting beneath them. "Yeah," I said. "Feels good." Her family began noticing too. Her sister called me to check in, clearly fishing for information. I kept it polite but vague. "We're fine," I said, which was true in the sense that a fire is fine once it's burned everything down. The more I stayed steady, the more she stumbled. She started overcompensating and making dinner, asking about my day, even touching my arm when she passed me in the kitchen. It all felt like a performance, and I treated it as such, pleasant nods, polite thanks, and nothing more. The first real crack in her confidence showed when she tried to bring up the deadline again. You know you've got a few weeks left, she said over dinner, trying to sound in control. I set my fork down and met her eyes. That deadline doesn't mean anything to me anymore. She froze like I had just spoken a language she didn't understand. From that night on, the power dynamic was obliterated. She knew I was no longer waiting for her approval or fearing her decision. She was the one uncertain, the one trying to figure out where she stood. Her game wasn't just breaking down, it was utterly demolished. She just hadn't admitted it yet. The apartment felt more like mine by the second week than the house ever had in the last year. I didn't overdecorate, just kept it clean, functional, and light. The kind of space where I could think without having to manage someone else's moods. I hadn't blocked her number, but I treated it like junk mail. If I needed something from the old place, I'd text her a date and time short and logistical. She tried to slip in little hooks, "We should talk," or "I miss us," but I didn't bite. She made one last push the following Friday, said she wanted to meet somewhere neutral to talk. I agreed because I wanted clarity to be audible. She picked a cafe halfway between us. I arrived on time. She was already there, stirring her coffee like it held answers. She started with nostalgia, how we used to be, the trips we'd taken, the special little things that made us different from other couples. I let her finish. Then I said, "You remember giving me that deadline?" Her eyes flickered. "I was trying to get through to you." "No," I said. "You were trying to keep me on a leash while you decided if I was worth keeping. That's not a marriage, that's a probation period, and I'm not interested in living under review." She went quiet, staring at the steam rising from her cup. "I didn't think you'd take it like that." "I didn't take it anyway," I said. "I acted on it. And now I know where my respect starts and ends." She sighed, the kind of long, slow exhale that comes when you realize a script isn't landing. "So that's it?" "That's it," I said. "We can handle the separation paperwork quietly, or we can drag it out. I'm fine either way, but I'm not coming back to a house where respect is conditional." Her face hardened with pure venom. "You'll regret this." I smiled, feeling absolutely intoxicated with victory. "No, I won't." We parted without a handshake, without any dramatic exit. I paid for my coffee, walked to my car, and drove back to my apartment without looking back, drunk on the sweet taste of justice. From then on, her messages came less often. The ones she did send were logistical, forwarding mail, confirming item pickups. The tone had no bite left in it. Whatever she'd been trying to prove in the beginning, she'd lost the taste for it completely. A month later, I heard from a mutual friend that she'd been seeing someone, but it wasn't going well. I didn't react. Why would I? Her choices weren't my weight to carry anymore. Life without her deadline felt euphoric in ways I hadn't expected. I was making plans without having to factor in someone else's silent disapproval. I signed a lease extension on the apartment, set up a new P.O. box, and took a weekend trip with no one to clear it with. One afternoon, she sent one final message. "I thought you'd fight for me." I didn't reply because the truth was devastatingly simple. I had fought for myself. The irony stayed with me, sweet as divine retribution. She gave me 6 weeks to prove I was the husband she needed. By morning, I'd become the man who didn't need her at all. And that's the thing about respect, once you realize it's not negotiable, you stop giving discounts. The woman who thought she could put me on probation discovered she'd been living with someone who had already graduated. The deadline she thought would control me became the liberation I didn't know I needed. Looking back now, I realize she did me the greatest favor of our marriage. She forced me to choose between her approval and my dignity. I chose correctly. The man who walked out that door wasn't the same one who'd been given an ultimatum. He was evolved, awakened, absolutely triumphant. And for the first time in years, he was exactly where he belonged, free from deadlines, auditions, and anyone else's permission to exist. That 6-week countdown she thought would break me down, it built me up instead. Justice had never tasted so intoxicatingly sweet.